Now, the anaerobic threshold or functional threshold power, or FTP, if you want to call it that, that is almost exclusively determined by the combination, the interplay of VO2 max and VLA max. Something like 97.5% of your FTP is decided by what is your VLA max and what is your VO2 max. So really, when it comes to improving your FTP and your anaerobic threshold, what you need to look at is what is your VO2 max and what is your VLA max. Now, with INSCYD, this testing of the calculations of the anaerobic threshold, it has been validated to better than 2.5% accuracy. So that's better than any other validated method. And one thing that's quite interesting is that it's the only method that has been validated in women as well as males. But just continuing with this example, this again here is Joe Schmo with a VO2 max of 60 and a VLA max of 0.31, 67 kilograms. So his anaerobic threshold is at 278 watts, which is 86.2% of his power at VO2 max. That's a 4.1 watt per kilogram anaerobic threshold. So good for a recreational athlete. Now, when it comes to determining how you should train to improve your anaerobic threshold, we need to look at VO2 max and VLA max. And we see here that VLA max is very low, 0.31. We know that it's unlikely that this is going to go even further down, and it's not going to change much at this level because it's already very low. It's already at the level of elite Ironman athletes. So that's not the route that we should go, and that's not the route we want to go, because you probably need a little bit of glycolytic capacity anyway. So that's out of the question, which leaves VO2 max. We want to work on increasing VO2 max. Now, how do we go about that? Well, that's a question that it depends on what type of training you've been doing before. To put things in simple terms, like there are two really good ways to improve VO2 max. It's high volume training and it's high intensity training. And, or I should say, an appropriately high intensity training, because you don't want to do like super anaerobic glycolytic sprint trainings. You would rather do things like VO2 max intervals at a specific intensity, or even just intervals that are above your threshold power, between your VO2 max and your threshold power, sort of, and try to extend them, to make them as long as possible, to just work at a long time at a very large percentage of your VO2 max, trying to get to at least a 90% of VO2 max. That would be your oxygen uptake. So INSCYD helps you work on this. So what I would do with this athlete is go and look at what is his aerobic maximum training zone here. So that's a target of 322 to 354 watts. So doing VO2 max intervals in the, let's say, 2 to 5 minute range in this range of power, that would be a great way to go about it. But we can also, looking at his anaerobic threshold zone, it ends at 297. We might also do longer intervals, like do 6 to 8 minute intervals between this 297 and 321. Now, another thing that is quite interesting to consider, if the athlete has time available to train, then significantly increasing training volume might be a great way to improve VO2 max, and it might actually be a lot safer than doing it with interval training. And perhaps the athlete has already done a lot of interval training in the past, in which case maybe the potential, for now at least, is tapped out, and the way forward would be to work more on volume rather than intensity, because volume and intensity, while the effects that they cause downstream are very similar, the signaling pathways are a bit different. So it might make sense to consider, what have you been doing in the past? Have you done a lot of intense training, and are you now sort of at a plateau, a bit stagnated? Well, in that case, I would recommend going for a higher volume approach and take that route instead. Another way that you can think about this is, if you're somebody who you feel like you're a real diesel engine, you have a lot of slow twitch fiber, not much fast twitch fiber. When you did like sprints in school, in primary school, and that sort of thing, you weren't one of the fastest guys or girls, then that indicates that you have a lot of slow twitch fiber, not that much fast twitch fiber. And people that are these like diesel engine types that don't have a lot of fast twitch fiber, they tend to respond very well to high volume training. That's not to say that they don't respond well to high intensity training. They do. But if you know that you're somebody who really, at the core, you are a slow twitch kind of athlete, then considering that high volume route is definitely something that you might consider. If, on the other hand, you're somebody looking at this profile again, you might naturally be sort of moderate or even more fast twitch, but perhaps you have worked specifically to bring your VLA max down because that's what's aligned with your goals. So you have done a lot of sweet spot training for several years and managed to bring it down. Then chances are that you still have a fair amount of fast twitch fibers in your body, and that might indicate that your sort of phenotype is a phenotype that responds really well to intense training, perhaps more so than high volume training. Ultimately, you need to test things and see what works for you. And of course, you can combine things. That is what we would call polarized training, I guess. Like do a lot of volume, but do maybe a couple of really good high intensity interval sessions per week. That would be perhaps one way that you can go about this. So many ways to skin a cat, but when you look at your threshold and you look at your VLA max and VO2 max, that's when you can start to make these sort of informed decisions about how to train so that you can bring this threshold up.